The high plains of the Montana Territory in the late summer of 1888 were a land of stunning, brutal beauty. It was a place where the sky, a vast, seamless dome of blue, felt closer than the next town, and the wind, which never seemed to sleep, carried the scent of sagebrush and distant pine. This was the world of the O'Connell family, a world they had fought and bled for. Standing before their log-and-stone cabin, a testament to 2 years of relentless labor, were Elias, the patriarch, his wife, Clara, and their 2 children, Elara and Owen. The image they presented was one of stoic defiance and quiet pride. Elias O'Connell, mid-40s, was a man carved from the land itself. His face was a roadmap of sun and worry, crisscrossed by fine lines that deepened when he smiled, which wasn't often these days. His wide-brimmed hat shadowed eyes, the color of old denim, eyes that were perpetually scanning the horizon. He stood solid, a Sharp's rifle cradled loosely in the crook of his arm, his hands rough and powerful. He wore the denim leather and homespun of a man who earned his living with CALLOUSES. Clara, a few years younger, possessed a gentle strength that was the true spine of the family. Her homespun dress, long and modest, hid the wiry muscle of a woman who chopped wood, managed a vegetable patch in hard-baked earth, and nursed wounds and fevers with equal competence. Her bonnet framed a face that was still beautiful, but marked by the ever-present anxiety of life on the frontier. Her smile, as she looked at her children, was a brief, fragile burst of sunlight. Elara 6 stood beside her mother, her small hand held tight in Clara's. She was the dreamer, her eyes wide with the wonder of the open country, though a certain shyness made her cling close. She wore a simple calico dress, her hair braided tight. Owen, 8, a miniature of his father, stood a little apart, his chin lifted. Dressed in bib overalls and a checkered shirt, he clutched a worn piece of rope, practicing a childish, clumsy lasso throw. He had the prairie swagger of a boy who knew the closest doctor was 3 days' ride and the closest lawman even further. They were posing for a fleeting moment of peace, a visual anchor against the unrelenting flow of time and trouble. The cabin behind them, with its solid stone chimney and sturdy porch, was their fortress. Beyond the split-rail fence lay their 160 acres, their dream, granted by the Homestead Act. "Look at you all," Elias said, his voice a low rumble, the words tasting like dust. "A proper family, on a proper claim. No one can say we ain't earned this." Clara squeezed Ilara's hand. "We have Elias, and we'll hold it." But the shadow that stretched long from the cabinot, the sun's shadow, but a darkness in Elias's soul, seemed to mock their quiet certainty. The trouble wasn't a drought or a rustler. The trouble was the land itself, or rather, what was under it, and who had the power to take it. The iron horse and the black dust. Their claim lay not in prime grazing territory, nor in a well-watered valley, but right on the edge of a vast, nearly worthless tract of land that lay like a long, flat bruise across the territory. What made it valuable, however, was a vein of high-quality bituminous coal that Elias had discovered. He hadn't meant to. He was digging a well deeper, desperate for a more reliable water source. When his pick struck a layer of rich, black rock. Elias knew better than to share the discovery. The small town of Red Creek, 20 miles to the west, was nothing more than a few saloons, a general store, and a territorial land office run by a man named Silas Crawl, who had the look of a vulture who had swallowed a diamond. Crawl was the local arm of the Great Western Rail and Mining Consortium, a behemoth that was laying track across the continent, hungry for fuel and land. For 6 months, Elias had kept his secret. He had quietly stockpiled a few tons of the coal, hauling it by wagon at night to a contact in a town further north, earning just enough to pay for seeds, a new rifle, and the mortgage on their land. He had believed that the sheer legality of his patent, his official deed, would protect them. He was wrong. 2 weeks prior, a survey team dressed too well, with compasses and chains that glittered too brightly, had appeared on the horizon. They were led by a precise, sharp-featured man named Mr. Finch, who carried a sheaf of documents and a condescending smile. Finch didn't ask to survey. He told Elias he was surveying. "You're on the line, Mr. O'Connell," Finch had stated, pointing a thin finger toward the corner of the fence. "The consortium has purchased the contiguous tract, a matter of future expansion and mineral rights." "My rights are secured, sir," Elias had answered, his hand resting on the fence post, his voice dangerously even. "I own this land outright." Finch's smile had widened, the effect unsettlingly predatory. "Technically, you own the surface rights, but the law, as it's been generously interpreted for the development of the West, states that the consortium retains subsurface mineral rights in this area. It's a technicality, you see, an oversight in the original deeds, language that the consortium has, shall we say, clarified." The conversation had deteriorated rapidly. Finch hadn't even pretended they weren't after the coal. He offered Elias a settlement. $500, a pittance for the land and their labor, and they were to be off the property within 30 days. $500 is an insult, Elias had spat. It wouldn't buy the nails in this cabin, let alone the work we put into it. "Then you'll leave with nothing," Finch had replied, his tone losing its professional veneer and adopting the hard edge of command. "The track is coming through, Mr. O'Connell. It stops for no man. Not for your little farm, not for your children. You cooperate, or you will be removed." The word removed had hung in the air like gunpowder smoke. Elias knew what it meant. Eviction, a manufactured legal problem, perhaps a fire, or a careless accident. In the territory, a large corporations will often supersede a single man's patent. The 30-day clock, the ultimatum, had shattered the peace of the O'Connell home. Elias, usually quiet, became volatile, pacing the small cabin floor like a caged animal. Clara, usually the picture of composure, moved with a tremor in her hands. That evening, the first serious discussion occurred after the children were asleep in the loft, the shadows of the kerosene lamp dancing over their worn possessions. "We have to go," Clara whispered, her voice tight with unshed tears. She was patching a tear in Owen's overalls, her needlework neat and precise. A desperate act of control. Elias stopped pacing. "Go where to, Clara?" "Back east, to live in a tenement and work in a factory. We sold everything for this. We swore we would build something for them." He gestured toward the ceiling. "Something solid." "It is solid, Elias," she countered, looking up, her face resolute. "But it's not worth your life." "They aren't asking. They're telling. We have 30 days. We pack what we can, sell the horses in Red Creek, and we start over. Further north, maybe, or west, to Oregon." He shook his head slowly. "No, that claim is ours. The land is good. The coal is better. It could mean we never worry about money again. It could mean college for Owen, a fine trousseau for L.R. It means a shallow grave for you, Elias," she exclaimed, the thread snapping in her hands. The small sound was jarring in the silence. "The consortium owns the marshal. They own the judges. We fight, we lose, and we end up in the poorhouse, or worse. Please, Elias, for the children's sake, let us just go." Elias walked to the single window, its pane too small to frame the whole tragedy of his predicament. He looked out at the moonlit prairie, the land he had cleared and loved. "The law is supposed to protect a man who owns his land," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "The law is a tool, Elias," Clara said, her voice dropping again, calmer now, but imbued with a deep, weary wisdom. "And the consortium is the one holding the hammer." "I've got a better hammer," he said, turning, his hand instinctively touching the cold, smooth wood of his rifle stock. "I will not be run off my own land." Clara stood up, walking to him. She didn't argue. She just laid her head against his chest, her arms wrapping around his waist. Don't be a fool, my love. Don't let your pride orphan our children. Please, orphan our children. Please. Over the next few days, a silent, tense standoff gripped the O'Connell farm. Elias didn't leave the property. He worked on the fence line. He checked the small herd of cattle, but his rifle was never far from his side. Every speck of dust on the horizon, every unfamiliar sound of an animal in the distance, put them all on edge. The ultimatum day, the first of the 30, was marked by a new, more aggressive intrusion. 3 men, rough-looking ranch hands clearly hired by the consortium, rode up to the fence line. They didn't have Finch's pretense of civility. They just sat their horses and stared. "You folks got until the harvest moon," the largest one yelled, spitting tobacco into the dust. "After that, we ain't responsible for what happens to your property or your livestock." Elias stepped onto the porch, his rifle raised and aimed at the chest of the large man. "This is my land. Turn your horses and ride, or the next sound you hear will be the muzzle blast." The 3 men hesitated. They saw the cold, murderous certainty in Elias's eyes. They had been hired to intimidate, not to die. After a long, silent minute that felt like an hour, they turned their horses and rode back the way they came, their retreat slow and deliberate, a promise of return in every hoofbeat. This incident solidified 2 things. Elias would not back down, and the consortium was willing to use violence. That night, Elias came to Clara with a different look on his face. The blind rage was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. "I won't sacrifice this land," he said, "but I won't lose the family either. I have a plan." Clara looked at him, fear turning to cautious hope. "Tell me." "Finch is relying on a technicality and brute force. I need to make the technicality irrelevant and the brute force too expensive. I need to get to Helena, to the Territorial Supreme Court." Helena was over a week's hard ride away. "You can't," Clara said. "If you leave, they'll come in immediately. They'll burn the place to the ground and claim squatting." "I know. That's why I'm not riding straight there." He pulled out a worn map of the territory, its creases darkened by use. "I know an old wagon route. It's rough, but it shaves for days off the journey. I can make it in 5 days, maybe 6. 3 days to file a petition for injunction and get a judge's order. Then, 3 days back. 10 or 12 days, Clara calculated, her breath catching. That leaves us 18 days of grace. No, it leaves you and the children 12 days alone here, Elias corrected. I need you to be strong, Clara. You're the reason they'll hesitate. They won't risk harming a woman and 2 children without a clear pretext. Not when the press, even the territorial press, could make a fuss. It'll slow down their purchase of the other claims. Clara was horrified. You want me to be a hostage? I want you to be a bulwark, he insisted. You hold the line. You keep the children in the cabin. If they come, you don't fight. You don't even talk to them. You just stand there, with the shotgun, and look them in the eye. You are the symbol of our right. He paused, his eyes pleading. And while they're deciding whether they dare to touch you, I'll be riding back with a judge's order that tells them to stop. It's the only way to beat them in their own game. Clara looked at the map, at the daunting miles, at the terrifying prospect of facing hardened men alone. She looked at the chimney of their cabin, solid and true, and thought of her children. If you're not back in 15 days, she finally said, her voice a dry rasp, I'm leaving. I'm taking the children and whatever we can carry, and I'm riding away from this madness, and I will never forgive you. 15 days, Elias confirmed, his hand clamping down on hers. By the morning of the 16th day, I will be riding back up to this fence line. I swear it. The sunrise departed the next morning, before the sun had fully cleared the eastern hills. The O'Connell family gathered for a hurried farewell. Elias, saddled on his best horse, a sturdy bay named Dusty, checked his provisions one last time: dried meat, a tin of coffee, a blanket, and his legal documents tucked into a waterproof oilcloth bag. Owen, sensing the gravity of the moment, stood tall, trying to hide the wobble in his chin. "I'll help Mama, Pa. I'll watch the fence." Elias knelt, pulling the boy into a fierce hug. "You're the man of the house now, son. You watch the sun and the horizon. You listen to your mother, and you take care of Alara. You remember your lessons." He turned to his daughter. Alara just wrapped her arms around his neck, a silent promise to be brave. "Be careful, Pa," she whispered. Finally, he faced Clara. She handed him a small, worn Bible, a family heirloom. "Don't lose faith, Elias, in God, in the law, or in me." "Never," he breathed, kissing her hard, a desperate promise in the press of his lips. "I love you, Clara. Hold the line." He mounted Dusty, casting one last, comprehensive look at his claim, his family, and his cabin, the bulwark of his life. Then, without looking back, he kicked his heels and rode out, not toward Red Creek and the easy road, but straight out onto the high prairie, toward the hidden trail and the far-off chance of justice in Helena. Clara watched until the dust cloud he raised had settled and the silhouette of man and horse was gone. Then she turned, her hand finding the cold metal of the family shotgun leaning against the doorframe. She ushered her children inside, bolting the door. The clock had begun to tick. 12 days, and already the horizon looked vast and threatening, promising the arrival of more than just a sunset. The isolation had become a trap, and the prairie, once an open invitation, now felt like a cage. Clara O'Connell, the gentle wife and mother, was now the sole defender of the O'Connell patent, armed with only a promise and a prayer